going on, everybody? Welcome to the RBS Cinema Podcast.
I know Kung Fu.
Show me.
This is Sparta! I'm thinking I'm back.
Why so serious?
Avengers!
Assemble. I'm Batman.
You better lawyer up, asshole. Because I'm not coming back for 30%. I'm coming back for everything.
I'll be back.
You shall not pass!
RBS.
Lovely.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to RBS Cinema. This week's movie, we decided to talk about not one, not two, but we got 4 Dungeons & Dragons movies. So we're running the gauntlet today.
All 4 of them.
I am your host, Devin, and with me I have a very special friend, Pax, here.
Hello.
And God damn it, Pax, what the hell did you get me into?
A lot of nerdy movies that are not very good,
Yes,
most of them.
I would have to agree. I was telling you earlier that what I wanted to do was space them out throughout the week, but because I was editing last week's episode, it wasn't that great.
Yeah.
And then had to watch like all of them last night.
Yeah.
So I stayed up until 2 a.m.
That's a bit rough. Yeah, that's a bit rough to watch them all at once.
Especially with the last one being the remake that came out in 2023, that one is over 2 hours.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's objectively the best one. So at least you saved the best for last.
yeah, right. I just went down the list and I'm like, all right, I saw the first one because it was on Amazon and I started it, and then I took a nap because I was tired and before I even started it, and woke up from my nap after like an hour and a half to 2 hours, and then I went back onto Prime and then it was gone, and I'm like, what the heck? And then I saw that it was back in 8 days, and I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah.
So then I looked it up online and it was on Tubi, so I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
at least I'll do that.
I watched it on Tubi as well. So that one's actually pretty okay. The first one. So basically, the plot is that they have these staves that can control dragons, and they're trying to. The Empress is like trying to get a different staff that controls red dragons instead of gold dragons or something like that, and
Yeah.
they get the staff eventually, blah blah blah. Lots of bad CG dragons. The plot itself is not very good.
No, it feels like that. It was just like all over the place because we'll talk about logistic stuff, like directed it, starred in it, and then we'll go ahead and open up the discussion for the movie itself. But
Cool.
Well, yes, those of you that are new to the show, basically what we do each week is that we talk about a new movie, obviously. And with that, we talk about the writer, director, who starred in it, and then taglines, and then we'll actually open up the discussion about the movie. And because we're running a gauntlet, it's going to be super quick paced because we're not going to stand here for 3 hours and talk about 4 movies. So, especially where I've only seen 3 and you obviously saw all 4. So, but with that being said, after we get to the end of it, we will give our consensus on now all 4 of these movies being a rent, buy, or skip, which is the reason why this is called RBS in the first place. And then by the end of it, we will also talk about suggest to people being a 1 or a 10 or sometimes both star reviews on IMDb about what people actually thought about this movie, and then open up that discussion as well. And then that'll be pretty much the end of it. So
There we go.
but yeah, even with what you were saying with the first one, basically we've got the Empress, who's in charge of, or who has a staff that has the gold, or who has a gold staff that can control gold dragons. Jeremy Irons is in this movie.
Yeah,
which
Jeremy
is
Irons,
very
hell yeah.
weird. Who's great, I will add. But for him, he wants the red staff so that he can control red dragons and try to take power.
Yep.
And that's basically what's going on. And then you've also got, because I have it written down in my notes as well, you have, let me go back, got 2 thieves, a dwarf, and a mage, and eventually later on an elf who's trying to also get the who's trying to stop Jeremy Irons towards the end of the movie, as well as trying to not have this war break out as well
Yeah.
by trying to find the staff.
Yeah, the elf is kind of like the queen's like right hand or something like that.
her secret assassin
Yeah.
person. So with that being said, it's just called Dungeons and Dragons from 2000. Got director Courtney Solomon, got writers Topper Lillian, Carol Cartwright, and E. Gary. I think this is
Gary
how you-
Gygax, that is
Gygax.
the creator of Dungeons and Dragons.
Nice.
He's kind of a legend in the Dungeons and Dragons space. I'm sure he was just kind of a writer as in a supervisory role. He probably didn't actually write a lot of it himself, but
Right. And then going down the cast for this movie being Justin Whalen, Jeremy Irons, like I mentioned before, Zoe McLellan, Bruce Payne, Marlon Wayans, which is very surprising.
Yep.
Very early in his career. Robert Miano, and then last one we got is Thora Birch, and then Lee Ehrenberg. Ehrenberg being the dwarf, because I don't know why he's lower on the chain, but it's probably by billing. So, but
yeah, he's a dwarf. He does a pretty good job, I think, of like playing a dwarf. Like, they have this ridiculous, like, very red, almost orange.
oh yeah,
like
big beard,
and-
like balding.
yeah. And he's just like, very stereotypical Dungeons and Dragons dwarf, like kind of hates everything to do with magic, hates elves, like just wants to get drunk and fight.
Right.
Like, yeah,
Also
it's
is afraid
pretty
of
good.
horses.
Yeah, it is afraid of horses. Yep. Yeah.
And especially for him later on in the movie, he goes like, "Oh, you don't know this, but dwarves are afraid of horses. And I'm not afraid to express my feelings unlike other dwarves. I'm scared." Like,
Yeah.
and he starts crying.
It's a pretty good comic relief scene. Yeah.
Yep.
Him and Marlon Wayne's character are definitely the plucky comic reliefs of the movie.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, it kind of shows the writing of the time too, because Marlon Wayans is very much cast as kind of like a token black guy,
Right.
Which is unfortunate, but
Yeah.
but that's what he was typecast into back in those days too. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
look at
that's
Scary's-
how most of like the early 2000s movies were. It's
Yeah.
all like, okay, well, we have a bunch of like the main characters that are white prominently, but then it's like, but we kind of need some diversity, so we're just gonna get the token black guy to be
Yeah,
a part
and
of this
it's
team.
usually one of the Wayans brothers.
Yeah, especially back then, if like you want to be in a comedy movie, okay, let's get one of the the Wayans brothers in here, and see who's available and see what we can do. And then we'll run through taglines, and then we will literally run with the course of the movie here. So this is no game. I would imagine so, because people die in it. Adventure hinges on more than just a throw of the dice. Obviously, everybody knows it's synonymous with Dungeons and Dragons, is that you have a 20-sided die, as well as other dice that is in the mix. Throw them, and that will contribute to your attributes and your scores and what you'll do. Adventure will never be the same. The game has just begun. And then this is my favorite at the end. It's no game! Exclamation point. So got to throw in that last one.
So they have two taglines.
It's not a game.
It's not a game. This is not a game, folks.
Yeah, it's not a game. This is real life. If you die in the game, you die for real. And every single one of these that I watched, I was waiting for like some kids in their basement playing Dungeons and Dragons, and it's all like, okay, and like that's the end of it, and the dungeon master closes the book, and it's all like, cool, well, what are we gonna do now? I don't know. Especially around that time, it's like, do you want to play GoldenEye? It's like, sure, and then just run upstairs and then just zoom in on the Dungeons and Dragons book. Like, I think that would have actually been a tiny bit better than just it being like a random story, because like everybody should know that Dungeons and Dragons is just like a story that you just make up as you go along.
Right.
Like you make your own characters, you make your own attributes. Of course, with each character, you have a set of rules that you have to abide by.
Yep.
Of going like, oh, you're a Claritin, so you have this amount of power, you have this magic, all this bunch of stuff.
Yeah, like clerics would be like holy magic. wizards or, they get spells from their books. Sorcerers derive their spells from their innate magic in their blood. And there's a whole bunch of different classes and everything.
Right. And then, of course, like the dungeon master will be like, oh, you go to a village. What's the first thing you do? It's like, oh, I want to go to the tavern. It's like, okay.
Yep.
Go into the tavern. You look around. What's your initiative? It's like, I want to go to the bar. It's like, okay, you order a drink. Roll for initiative for the drink. Like, and that will dictate if you get just like a pile of slop or you get like the really high expensive drink on the menu.
So you would probably roll, like, if you're trying to get a specific drink, if you're trying to like persuade the bartender, you'd roll a persuasion check or something like that. Initiative is usually reserved for like when combat starts.
Right.
So you roll your initiative and that determines your order in combat and that kind of thing. But I was kind of expecting some more references, like you were talking about, like this is like kids playing a game or something like that. I was kind of expecting some more out of that, at least from one of these movies. But not a single one does it.
Yeah, I was expecting it, especially at the end of it, because now Dungeons and Dragons is just pretty much anywhere. Like everybody's heard of Dungeons and Dragons, whether that be a good connotation or a bad connotation.
Yep.
And it's like, go into a comic book store. They have a little section of D&D stuff, like dice or miniatures or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, it's pretty much synonymous in everything, and especially in pop culture now.
Oh, yeah.
And
it's huge now.
I was expecting it at the end of the last one, at least. So, because especially back then, it wasn't that relevant. Like, it was like a very niche amount of people, kind of like with comic books that I've mentioned before in the show. So it's like that whole chestnut. So
yeah, it's wild that this Dungeons and Dragons movie even got made as early as it did to me. It was something that was like very gratifying to me as a kid, because like I grew up playing Dungeons and Dragons. My dad was a D&D nerd, so I started playing very early. I got all my friends into it, and like this movie coming out was a huge deal, because it's like, oh wow, like they're really recognizing that Dungeons and Dragons is like a good thing, and like, and then the movie came out and it flopped and it was really bad. So
yeah, for sure. Because we'll talk about the second one, but we'll run through our list of stuff that we had up for the movies here real quick. So for me, I basically already talked about like what the thing is about, but I also noted that like the costumes and set design is actually really good in the first one.
100%.
So, and like then I had it written down, like CGI for Dragon is just terrible.
Yeah.
Like in the beginning when Jeremy Irons goes like, okay, open the gate, and like he wants to take the dragon and try to actually
like control
it, and because he makes his own staff for it, and then it's like the CGI dragon, it's like, that's terrible.
Yeah,
like
it's
even for
pretty
that
bad.
time, it's bad.
It's pretty bad.
Like,
yeah, it's definitely low budget.
Yeah.
Well, and then like talking about the CGI, like there's a scene at the end with tons of dragons.
Oh
and
yeah.
It's so bad. It's
right.
so bad.
And especially with the princess riding one of the golden dragons, and so she's just like minimal screen time for that, and I'm like, for good reason. Because it's like she's on a contraption, she's just moving back and forth and stuff.
Yeah,
you
can tell it's just like some really bad mechanical thing that's kind of jerking her back and forth, and she's just sitting in front of a green screen. Like, it's pretty bad. Yeah.
Right.
I think like the plot is severely lacking for sure. Like it's it kind of feels like some writers that had never played Dungeons and Dragons wrote it.
Yeah.
They just knew that there needed to be a dungeon and there needed to be some dragons. So
pretty much.
Yeah.
And of course, like the base amount of characters, like a dwarf, thief, elf, like dragons, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and the main bad guy, Profion, who's played by Jeremy Irons, like he doesn't even do much the whole film. He sends his lackey Demoda, who is wearing this like very slay blue lipstick the whole time. I was like, dang, dude, that's awesome.
Odd choice.
Yeah,
I was just like, that's a pretty odd choice, but I'll take it.
I was like, slay queen, let's go. Blue lipstick.
I also noted that like when he's trying to possess the dragon in the beginning, the dragon breathes fire and a bunch of the people catch on fire. And so one of the guys catches on fire and he just like jumps off the stairs. it had me dying. And then we get into the two main characters who are the thieves, Marlon Wayans and his friend, because it's Snails and Ridley, that's his name.
Ridley, yeah.
And then they break into the magic school, and then they're like, I love how clumsy they are because they keep making noise, and then they're like, keep shushing each other.
Yep.
They're like, you're causing too much noise, shut the hell up.
Yeah.
It's just like that whole back and forth. So
yeah, and then they end up getting caught because they press a box that creates like an illusion of a dragon that's very, very noisy. And then, that's where we get introduced to our mage character. She comes in and catches them.
Yeah. She goes like, what are you guys doing in here? And they're like, oh, we're the cleaning crew. And so she goes like, we don't have a cleaning crew.
Yeah.
Hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
But I also noted that like Jeremy Irons was acting his heart out for this movie.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
He's a phenomenal actor, and I'm pretty sure like no matter what role that he's stuck in, he will always act his heart out. Like regardless of what it is.
He was definitely like one of the best parts of this movie. For sure. Like Jeremy Irons was killing it. He really is good at playing a villain. I mean, you know, he's Scar in The Lion King. And, and so many other iconic roles. So we love him as a villain. But even Jeremy Irons as a villain could not save this movie, I don't think.
No, like it definitely put it a step up, but not enough though. So
yeah. And overall, like as I was watching this one, like there's not even that many references to like actual D&D things, like magic items or creatures and that kind of stuff. It's basically kind of just the dragons and these dragon staves, which don't actually exist in any D&D source books. So it was just kind of disappointing overall from like a D&D perspective too.
Because like I would say that you're my designated nerd for right now for D&D, because it's all like I know a little bit about D&D. I don't know the whole scope of it.
Right.
And hi Johnny. Sorry, my cat's under the table right now. He just came up and he just looks up. But yeah, I know D&D. I know a little bit about it just from in general of, you know, living life.
Yeah.
So,
like pop culture absorption.
yeah, pop culture absorption, people talking about it, stuff like that. So it's like, okay, yeah, sure, like that makes sense. And then it's all oftentimes it's like, yeah, that went above my head, I don't understand what that means. So like especially with all the dice, and it's like the only one I know is the 20-sided die. It's like that basically dictates everything for when you're playing. So and then of course then you've got the 4-sided die, you've got a like probably
six,
a 6,
an 8, a 10,
yeah.
a 12. Yep. I
It's
even
like
have 100-sided.
literally a handful. You just go like, go dice. So
yeah, I even have a 100-sided die.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool for like rolling percentages and that kind of thing.
right.
But yeah, but you're right. The D20 basically does dictate almost everything you do. So if you're going to try and persuade somebody, you're rolling a D20. If you're going to try and hit somebody, you're rolling a D20.
Yeah, especially if it's like if you're a barbarian, like you have your strength, and it's like, okay, roll for your strength.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, my strength is like 85 out of like 100 or something like that. However much it is.
So stats are typically in the range of like 10 to 20. So the way you determine your stats is you roll 4 6-sided dice and you take the 3 highest, and that becomes your stat for that particular skill.
Right.
So a lot of times like DMs will let you roll all your stats and then assign them. But the old school way that it used to be played, like my dad taught me, was you would roll for them in order, and whatever you got was whatever you got.
Yeah.
And it was pretty rough that way.
Jeez.
But yeah, so like your stats, like let's say you have an 18 in strength, you're a barbarian. So every 2 points above 10 for that stat, it gets you a +1 bonus. So 18 would be at like +4 strength, basically. So let's say you're trying to roll to like grab somebody and tie them up or grapple with them, you would roll an athletics check. So it'd be if you're proficient in the athletics, you would get you get what's called a proficiency bonus. So like that's like +1 starting out. So +1 plus your strength, so +4. So your total athletics would be +5. So you roll a d20. add +5, and if it beats the character's roll that you're trying to grapple with, you successfully grapple them. Things like
Gotcha.
that is kind of how the stats and stuff in D&D works. And yeah, like I was really expecting a lot more kind of Dungeons and Dragons references in these
Right.
D&D movies.
Yeah, I think it would have been funny, especially the first one, going like, hold on, I need to go and pickpocket this guy to get like a book or something because he has what we need. It's like, let me roll for initiative. And then people like look at him, they're like, what the hell are you doing? It's all like, oh, sorry. I forgot. And then just like make some sort of thing about it. Like, I think that would have been a little bit better to like keep that in the lore of Dungeons and Dragons as a whole. And then that way fans and other people, they can like rejoice and be like, oh man, like that's an awesome reference or whatever.
Yeah.
So
All right, so yeah, like the main plot of this movie is, like you said, Jeremy Irons is trying to get staff to control red dragons, and then the party is trying to prevent him from his evil scheme.
yeah.
They go through a whole bunch of stuff. There's like a dungeon with some beholders at one point, which is like a classic D&D monster, which was cool to see.
Yeah.
But so yeah, there's a lot of stuff that they go through. Like there's, you know, when they meet the dwarf, there's like a tavern brawl that they have to escape. They get captured at one point by like a weird dude with 3 eyes.
Yeah. Going back to the tavern fight, I have it written down in my notes because like basically what I would do is just like take out bits that I like, and I'm like, okay, you know, like that would be pretty awesome. Like when they all sit down at the table, and then both the mage and Ridley, they're looking at the map. And he goes like, oh, my dad had these markings for like locking picks or pick locking or whatever it is. And he's all like, hold on, he would do this and then he would say this phrase and then like he gets transported into the map. And so does she.
Yeah.
And then you have just Marlon Wayne's snails and the dwarf are just sitting there. And then he's laying on the table and then he goes like, you know what, I would go for like basically like, you know, being with a woman, blah 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 blah. And Snails notices the elf at the bar, and so he goes downstairs and like talking about her, and the dwarf looks at him and he goes like, oh man, that's disgusting, like you need a woman that needs meat on her bones. He goes like, here's a real woman, a 250-pound dwarf that has a beard that you can hang from. And I'm just like, all right, let's get it. So
very
I thought that was
stereotypical D&D dwarf.
Yeah, and I thought that was hilarious. And then, but yeah, and then later on, they go to the town and they go to the thieves guild of the city, and Ridley basically is supposed to go through a maze of traps to get the dragon's eye. And it just turns out that that's actually the main thief's guy that runs everything. That's his ploy, is to basically have somebody be able to go through the traps and be able to steal the eye, and then he was going to take it from them.
Right, because they need the eye for the staff or whatever.
Yeah. And so for that, he goes like, yeah, every time somebody always dies, but nobody's ever gotten past a certain point or whatever. And then Ridley actually makes it all the way through. And I wrote it down. I'm like, this isn't actually a maze. This is just a long corridor that he has to navigate through. Like, that's all that it is.
Yeah, they call it a maze, but it's really just a series of traps.
Yeah, because like the first corridor is just like a trap of swinging axes from the roof. And he just like goes one to the other to get across the room, and then he gets through the other room, and now it's just like a whole room full of like eyes that are just like tiles, and he steps on the wrong tile, fire shoots out of the walls, and he just has to navigate while the wall behind him is also pushing to close off the room. And so he makes it through that, and then the last trap is for him to an hourglass basically turns, and then he has a set amount of time. There's a gate with spikes on the top that's lowering, and then he's also I think what was he trying to do? Like reach his hand through this big, huge like window thing, but it had like spiraling spikes in it or something like that.
He was trying to like reach for it was either like a key or something. I can't remember exactly what he was trying to reach for, but some kind of mechanism to disarm the trap.
Yeah, and then so he just like breaks the hourglass and it stops everything. And then they were like, "Oh man, he did it." So I'm just like, okay,
also,
cool.
like, what a cheesy, like, bad trap to have if you can just break the hourglass and it.
Right. And it's like, oh, and then it just stops. It's like, oh man, it must be out of time. So
Yeah.
like, and then they get the dragon's eye, and then they find out where the scepter is, and then they go there, and the only one that can actually go into the cave is Ridley. So, but I did like. But yeah, and then I mentioned it earlier that I have it written down, like the dwarf is afraid of horses. So that was funny. And then after they get the scepter, the guy that's holding it, who's dead, who made the scepter, he goes like a skeleton basically telling Ridley like, oh yeah, like beware its power.
Yeah, this thing started a war, yeah.
So, and then I was all like, yeah, he's basically the chosen one because nobody else can get through there except for him. And I'm all like, it can't be that he's human because you have a mage who's a magic user, you have an elf who's an elf, but then you've also got Marlon Wayne's Snail who's also human because they're both just thieves. So I was thinking the whole time like he was maybe an elf because the whole movie he's been wearing like this kind of like headband beanie thing to like hide the top of his ears.
Yeah.
So I was thinking like, oh man, it's going to be revealed that he's actually an elf.
No, he's just a regular guy.
Yeah, he's just a regular guy. He just wears this thing for like fashion, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and the fact that it's like twice in this movie, it's like, oh, only this character can go do this thing. That's very anti Dungeons and Dragons because Dungeons and Dragons is a team sport. Like, everybody at the table should be playing.
Oh, 100%. And then especially for the fact that before they get to the cave, because then the elf, she takes them to like get, because I'm trying to think if it's before or after that he gets healed up. Yeah, because then he gets healed up, and before that, like they try to go and steal the map back from what's his name? I have it written down. Yeah, and I saw that like Marlon Wayans gets trapped in the rug, and I'm like, okay, that was actually a pretty cool effect. Like that was really cool because it's basically kind of like almost like quicksand, but it's like mud or something to that effect. But it looks just like the rug. I'm like, oh, that was actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then
that was a practical effect. It wasn't CGI.
Oh, 100%. So. Like that's what I liked the most about it was that it was a practical effect. And then he dies from fighting Dumbledore.
Yeah.
And stuff, and then they leave because then they escape, and then they go to the elves, and then Ridley gets healed up from the elf from one of the older elves.
Yep.
And then they bestow him a special sword, and then there's two elves that are talking, and then they're all like, "Yeah, he's special, but he doesn't know it yet," and all that stuff. And it's like, but he'll know in time, is kind of the allusion to it. And I'm like, okay, like, and it was kind of like where he goes like, yeah, like my dad used to be a thief, but I'm like, okay, but that also means that you're special too. So, and I thought of the Arnold Schwarzenegger reference to Kindergarten Cop going like, well, is your daddy and what does he do? So
I also want to point out that the main character in this movie, not once but twice, says "Honor Among Thieves," which is the title of the latest D&D film. Yeah.
And I'm all like, huh.
I'm pretty sure that it's a reference to this movie.
Right, 100%.
Sure.
Because, like, I'm like, there's no way that you would just remake this movie and just be like, all right, here's this tagline for it. Like, this is what it's going to be called, is Among Thieves. And it's all like, okay. Because, like, even the second one, that one wasn't even called Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, it had the name on there, but it was just mostly called, like, Wrath of the Dragon or something like that.
Wrath of the Dragon God, yeah.
And then even the third one was like Dungeons and Dragons and blah, 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 blah. And then like something about a dragon. And I'm like, okay, like that makes sense. But getting close to the end here because just cut right through it. Basically, I also had it written down because now Jeremy Irons has the council in his pocket now.
Yep.
Because he goes like, if the queen does not relinquish her scepter to control the dragons, then she's up to no good. And
Yeah.
we want to test this theory because, of course, he's a bad guy and he wants the council on his side. Basically, kind of like a dumber version of Star Wars.
Yeah.
The prequels. And by the end of it, she goes like, "I'm not relinquishing my staff," and he goes like, "Aha, j'accuse."
Yeah.
Like she's a bad person.
Yep.
Like she wants to start a war, and so she's like, "No, you do." Like I don't know what the hell you're feeding these people with your bullshit, but that's not true. And then now they're starting the war, and then because now Dumbledore actually has the red scepter, and he goes to Jeremy Irons to give him the red scepter to control the red dragons. And I just thought it was funny that that they're all basically like wizards and mages and stuff.
Yeah, it was the Council of Mages.
Yeah, and I'm just like, oh, wizards use fire against dragons, and I'm like, that was dumb. Like, they're impervious to fire because they are fire-breathing dragons. Like their scales are strong enough to withstand fire.
Yeah,
it
was pretty funny watching a bunch of mages like throw fireballs at dragons.
Yeah,
like, why wouldn't they use like lightning
or ice or something?
But yeah, no, they throw a bunch of fireball spells at the dragons, and it does nothing to the gold dragons.
Yeah, and then Jeremy Irons finally gets the scepter, and then he conjures up the red dragons to come and fight, and now it's just a big, huge CGI mess of red dragons versus gold dragons.
Yep.
And Dumbledore gets his because Ridley finally gets his revenge for him killing his friend.
Yep. Yeah, Ridley's able to defeat Demoda, I think is his name. Demoda. Like they get in like basically like a one-on-one fight, and the main character is able to win. And throws him off the tower, which is pretty rad scene. But
he like stabs him in the back and then he throws him off the side, and then he's just falling.
Yeah. And then the whole party, other than Snails, who's dead, R.I.P., shows up, and they're able to fight Jeremy Irons and break his staff. And that's kind of where the whole victory at the end comes from.
Yeah. And I love the fact, because I also wrote this down in my notes too, that the staff is gone now, and then the princess is able to like get a gold dragon to come and like basically eat Jeremy Irons. Yeah. And I thought it was funny. I'm like, oh yeah, he got the Shrek treatment. Yeah. Like by the end, 100%. Lord Farquaad gets eaten by the dragon, and I'm all like, there's a similarity here because that also came out in 2000 as well. Yep. And I'm just like, I wonder who played off of who or what. So,
but yeah, that's the first film.
Yeah, that's the end of the first film, and then we'll keep rolling here into the second one. I don't have anything for the second one, so we don't have to worry about director, stars, anything, because I had it written down. I'm like, this looks like a bad sci-fi movie. Like, it does. It would be on the Sci-Fi Channel.
It seems like it was released on on Sci-Fi or something. It's definitely a B movie.
Oh, 100%.
100%. The second one and the third ones are definitely B movies.
Yeah.
But the second one is probably the closest, other than the newest one, to Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's
D&D
that way.
references in this second one. So it's really cool as like a D&D fan seeing all the references. But yeah, it's again, plot isn't super great. Basically, in this one, Demoda's back. He was cursed to undeath.
Yeah,
apparently.
which was super weird because I'm like, this is supposed to be a sequel to the first one. Yep. So, and then I was thinking like, is this supposed to be like a sequel prequel that like it's supposed to be the second one, but it takes place before the first one?
Yeah.
And then because like he died in the first one, he was thrown off of the tower.
Yeah.
So it's like he definitely went kasplat, and then now he's just trapped in an orb, and now he comes back. And I'm all like, okay, he wasn't trapped in the first one, so like, what the hell? And then even like the main character from that was like a knight, and I'm like, okay, maybe this is Ridley's dad, so like that would make sense because they look similar.
Yeah.
And it's just like, but no, because Ridley said that his dad was a thief, so that doesn't make any sense either.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what the hell is happening?
So yeah, so it takes place like I think it's like 100 or 200 years after the first one.
Yeah. Again, doesn't make any sense because you got Dumbledore who comes back.
Yeah, Demoda apparently was cursed to undeath by Profion, apparently by his former masters, what they say, and he finds this orb. The Orb of Falliger, which Falliger is a undead dragon deity from 2nd edition of Dungeons and Dragons, and he finds this orb that cures him of his undeath.
Right.
And but in doing so is like waking up the dragon or something like that.
Kind of like the mummy effect of Imhotep coming back.
Oh,
and then
100%.
He just like takes
very similar.
like different pieces and organs and stuff from other people, so that way he can be whole again.
Yeah.
So, but being undead at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, he gets this orb.
And real quick, I also had it written down on my notes, and I'm like, the bald guy looks like Dumbledore from the first one, and then later on, I'm just like, oh wait, that is him.
It is 100% Demoda from the first film. Yeah.
And I'm like, what happened? Like,
yeah.
I'm like, okay, whatever. Pushing on. But yeah, I also had a couple things at the beginning. Was like when they're describing what's happening in the beginning and stuff, and like they had fire babies, and I'm like, okay, that's funny. And then it was like more bad CGI, and I'm like, it was even worse than the first movie back in 2000. Like this one came out 5 years later, and I'm like, okay, definitely CGI has been better than that, but I can also understand for the budget and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
and those fire babies are actually a D&D monster called a manticore. So they're little. They look like little babies. They're made of fire. They're like fire elementals, and they're really mischievous, and they kind of just run around and cause chaos.
Right.
But it was cool to see an actual D&D monster and like so early on in this.
Yeah. And then because like there's not one but two dragons that they fight. Well, the first one they don't fight. The second one they do, because they go to a town because there's somebody from that town that goes like, hey, like we need your help, and then they're in the cave and there's just a bunch of green smog on the ground. And the guy's wife, who's a mage, like expels the smoke.
Yep, she uses a
period.
gust of wind spell. So that was another D&D reference that was cool. So yeah, they're the main character is like this hero, like captain of the guard.
Well, he used to be, and now he's
almost
like a king.
Past his prime or whatever. He's like a lord, a feudal lord.
Right.
Barrick, I think, is what his name was, and his wife Melora is like a sorcerer. They get asked to come to this cave that's like filling up with poison gas to figure out what's going on, and it turns out that it's a dragon waking up.
Yeah.
And it is Falliger. It's this ancient dragon god who's a black dragon. Then they famously, if you know Dungeons and Dragons, you know black dragons breathe poison. The funniest thing about this scene to me was he like literally opens the dragon's eye and it looks at him and then just doesn't
wake up.
And then
especially where it kept cutting back to where the green smoke was coming out of. And then they're like, oh my god, like this is the dragon. I'm like, yeah, and that's its nose. And they're like, yep, it's its nose. And I'm like, yep, called it. Like,
yeah.
But I did think that was pretty funny too, that he's like looking around, because like back when he used to explore, he would be like, oh, there'd be like some sigils on the wall, like a hidden compartment or something, and then like he finds the eyelid and he pushes it open and he goes like, yeah, this whole thing is the dragon. Like we need to get the hell out of here. Like, and the guy, the villager, goes like, what are we supposed to do? And he goes like, flee, just leave, there's nothing you can do, like just move, like that's all you can do. So
and then they try and figure out what's going on with the dragon. Melora uses like a divination spell and sees like Demoda's plot to wake up this dragon lord or whatever. She somehow just conveniently has these like 4 tomes that all combine into one tome that's like gonna show them the secret of how to like keep this dragon imprisoned or something.
Yeah, because like they find the box of the books, and so like they're trying to read through them, and so they're like, oh, this is all just like different words. I have no idea. I can't make heads or tails of it. And then she does that, and then while also looking at what he's doing or what his plan is, he takes a lock of her hair.
Yeah.
And now she's like poisoned, basically.
Yeah, he curses her to undeath. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then apparently she's just like wakes up on the ground and he goes like, "Are you all right? Like you did this," and then all of a sudden you like fell over and now the whole table's like collapsed.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, "Oh, how convenient that the books are also in a position now
that they're
to
all
where
aligned.
you saw it in your vision."
Yep.
How
It's
proficient is that?
Very
So-
convenient. But hey, the plot's got to move forward somehow.
Yeah, and then so all she has to do is just turn one book 45 degrees, and it's all like, "Oh man, now these 4 books make one big book."
Yep.
So
Yeah, and then they find out that they need this orb that Demota has, and so the Barrick puts together a party to go try and get the orb. So we have Barrick, who's the fighter, or paladin maybe. It's unclear. Lux, who's like a big barbarian woman. Dorian, who's like a cleric of Obed High, which is another D&D reference. That's going to be like, he's like a nature god.
yeah,
Ormeline, the wizard, and Nim, the thief. And the party makes their way to go try and get the orb.
which I did think it was funny that after they discovered what is going to happen and what they need to like basically battle against Domador, I thought it was hilarious that like when the priests come in, and you have like the main 2 that are doing most of the talking. You have one that's behind them who's just like looking around like he's on drugs or something.
Like,
I'm all like, that is so funny. I didn't focus on any of the dialogue, and I'm like, what is this guy doing?
Where did you hear such tales?
Like, what is up with him?
Yeah,
So
really,
I thought
really,
that was
really
hilarious.
bad extras in this one.
Yeah, and
For sure.
he's not like, because usually if you're an extra in a movie, it's just like, okay, stand here, don't say anything, just, you know, you're directed to do something like, oh, run in this direction, you throw your hands up, whatever, because like there's this big climactic thing that's happening, or it's like just
going like
stand there.
this.
He's just like, what? Oh my god, do you guys see this unicorn? And it's all like, what drugs was he on when he filmed this? So like that was just super weird and funny. But yeah, and then like the last bit of notes that I had was just like, oh yeah, the bald guy is Domador, because like they also call him by name as well. And then like I was like, I think this is him because he looks very familiar. Later on, they reference him by name, and I'm like, okay, that is him.
Yeah, the only thing he's missing from the first film is his blue lipstick. He doesn't have the blue lipstick anymore.
Right.
But
that was just some random bald wizard. So.
Yeah. So yeah, they go to try and retrieve this orb. They run into a lich at one point. The lich goes and finds Demota and tells him that the party's coming. The lich offers his fealty to Demota. The party's looking for this like pool that will allow them to see exactly the orb's location so that the wizard can teleport them there.
Yeah.
There's a nearby village of goblins where the chieftain knows where the pool is, so they show up there. All the goblins are dead. This is where we get a bunch of really cool D&D references. A detect magic spell is used. They find a magic ring, and she uses the identify spell to figure out what the ring is. The rogue uses his gem of true seeing. He finds a hidden door. He realizes the hidden door is trapped. He disarms the trap.
Yeah,
Like-
and then like the barbarian goes like, I'm forever in your debt, and he goes like, well, nobody's ever given me anything because like
Yeah, she
before
had given
all of
him the
that, she
knife,
gave
yeah.
him her dagger, and he goes like, let's just call it even.
Yep.
And so like, and he had a hard time like saying even, not just like, oh, that's just a hard word, just like the fact he was getting choked up because I don't think he's ever said that before. So it's just like, oh yeah, let's just call it even.
Yeah, that was
So-
kind of like a nice little touching moment.
Yeah, because then it just makes them more closer together, and like now he's actually trusting people and stuff, and because like especially before they set the trap, and he goes like, now let's see what would have happened if I wasn't here, and then they take the chest up, and then the spikes come out of the bed,
Yep.
and he goes like, yeah, see, told you, it's a trap. It always is a trap.
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, yeah, duh.
So yeah, from there they're able to get a map to that like pool of like that they're able to like see divine the orb's location through. They get a map to that pool. And then shortly after they get the map, hear a big noise and ice starts to form in the roof, and they are ambushed by a white dragon.
Yeah. Which is very smart for what the main guy did, because while they're fighting it, he's trying to like figure out a way to actually take it down. And he goes like, okay, how about this? How about the thief, he'll use the, what is it, like the stomach acid from
it's
something.
Purple worm toxin.
Yeah.
And he had used that previously to get rid of the lock on
Yeah.
the lockbox. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he goes like, all right, throw that at the dragon. I will throw a spear, and then the mage will use lightning, and then
On
that
that
will,
spear,
which will create a
the-
conduit.
So yeah, they're all scattering when the white dragon shows up. The cleric pops out, tries to cast a wall of fire to negate the frost breath.
Yeah.
Doesn't work. He's frozen solid. Dragon eats the cleric.
Yeah.
Which is just kind of a really, like, it's supposed to be serious, but it's a really funny scene. I was laughing my butt off at that. And then, like you said, thief throws the purple worm toxin. It weakens the dragon's scales. The fighter throws his spear. The mage casts lightning on the spear. Oh, and the barbarian went to distract the dragon so that all of this could be pulled off. The party kind of rallies after the cleric is beaten, and then instead of the dragon just dying, it explodes for some reason, which was also really funny. I was like, why would lightning make a dragon explode? I don't think it would.
No, I think it would just roast him. Like, you would see smoke rise out of its body, and it's just like he would get fried. He wouldn't explode. So.
But yeah, so lots of little, like, actual cool D&D references in those scenes. After that, they make their way to the pool. They are ambushed by barbarians at the entrance to this like tomb where the pool is. There's a puzzle to the tomb. They have to like click certain letters that are on the tombs.
And then they find out, like, how do you spell this person's name? And they're like, well, it's with the K at the end, but it's an X.
Yeah, so they press the X and the door starts opening.
Yeah, and then they start going like, okay, just start pushing these letters and the door should open. And then they get in, and then they discover where it's at and stuff.
Yeah, inside here where the pool is, there's an electricity trap. The rogue uses his rogue skills to reveal a mirror that lets them get across the electricity trap. Unfortunately, the rogue is the last one to go across, and the mirror is being the wall is closing on the mirror again, so he can't see where to step across the electricity trap, and he gets electrocuted. But they get to the pool, so they all teleport to Demoda, to where the orb is. It seems like they're not going to succeed because the mage has accidentally teleported her arm into a wall.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah, so she
I was
accidentally
thinking, like, what
teleported her-
happened?
Yeah, so they teleported, and her arm is stuck in the wall like this, like it's cut off right here. And then the barbarian and the fighter are like trapped
in a cage. And also at the same time, because the cage drops from the ceiling, and he has his sword, and when the cage dropped down, it hit his hand, so he dropped his sword.
Right.
So he couldn't actually like do anything. But the bars are pretty spaced out enough to where he could just like reach out and grab a sword, which he does.
Which he does. He just reaches down and grabs a sword and then chops up the cage, and they're free. Like, was kind of anticlimactic. They fight Demoda.
And then like he has the orb in his hand, and so he says something about like, oh, you can't like defeat me. And he goes like, do you want to bet? And like chops off his hand.
Yeah, chops his
and I'm
hand
like,
off.
oh man, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So
they grab the orb. They teleport away. They teleport to a temple of Obed-High clerics where the rogue and the mage can be healed. The barbarians.
Yeah, because like didn't they try? Because like wasn't he going to like chop off her hand or her arm because it was stuck in the wall?
They to free the wizard, they like cut her arm off. Yeah. Or it's implied that they cut her arm off.
Because I thought that she was like bleeding out and he was going to chop off her head. because I didn't see that she got teleported into the into
her arm
the
was
wall.
stuck in the wall. Yeah.
So, but now that makes more sense because he goes like, "Okay, forgive me," and then it cut to them being back at the village.
But yeah, so they realize that they're followed by like some fiends or something. The barbarian stays behind. Looks like she's dying to let the fighter go on ahead with the orb. And the fighter gets the orb back to the town. Unfortunately, at this point, the Lich had killed like the main priest guy and assumed his place as a shapeshifter.
Yeah, and then he shapeshifts into like this random, like it looks like a gargoyle type creature, and then he flies away.
But yeah, when he gets the orb in his hand, he takes the orb back to Demota.
Who's now right outside the village.
He's right outside the village. Demota uses the orb to awaken Falliger. Falliger promises to raise Ishmir and let Demota rule whatever is remaining, as long as he brings Falliger 100 heads every new moon, which was kind of a cool little badass moment. Unfortunately, that badassery is kind of ruined immediately because the Black Dragon goes to fly over the town and begins shooting fire.
Yeah.
Black Dragons are supposed to shoot acid. Not very D&D, guys.
Yeah.
So...
I think it's probably just like the fact that they're just like, oh, here's my cat again. Now he wants to be the star of the show. So.
He wants to be on the podcast.
Apparently he also has something to say about it. What are you doing? Oh, is that what you're doing? Freaking psycho. But yeah, I thought it was funny because it's just like, oh yeah, it's a dragon, he'll breathe fire, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, but really, if you're trying to stay true to the source material, you kind of have to know
Which they had been so far. Like,
up until that point.
Literally, the dragon was breathing poison at the beginning of the film.
Right.
So what happened?
Yeah. It's all like, what happened to that green like smoke that you were expelling from your nostrils?
Yeah.
Like, the hell? But I think it was probably just like, well, we kind of can't just have him breathe green smoke into the village. So it's like, let's just let him breathe fire, whatever.
Yeah, probably.
So, because he's a dragon and dragons breathe fire, whatever.
Yeah. Oh, and Falliger destroyed the old orb. That I forgot to mention too. He destroys the old orb. Melora prays to Obed High and gets a new orb. But she's unable to use it against the dragon because of her curse of undeath is so, like, she's so close to, like, actually dying. Yeah, she's, like, very weak and stuff. Barrick, our main character, rides out to fight Demota, and he's chasing after him. Surprise, the barbarian's not dead. She scares Demota's horse. Yeah. He gets bucked off the horse. She almost kills him, but the fighter convinces her not to kill him so he can have Demota break the curse. Yeah. Which he does. Because the fighter threatens to curse him to undeath again. Yeah. If he doesn't. So, curse is broken. Melora is able to use the orb and imprisons Falliger underneath the rock at the bottom of a nearby lake. And boom, the end. And I was like, kind of thinking like, okay, did he just, because now all of his friends are back, like they're like, even the ones that died, like they're back and stuff like that, all of them except for, well, yeah, like they show the cleric at the end, the one that got eaten by the white dragon, so I'm like, is that his spirit, or is that, did they resurrect him? I'm just like, because now he's just here. And I thought that was also pretty weird at the end of the first one, that Ridley is being knighted for his efforts to saving the town and stuff. And then they make a memorial for snails, and just like with a pile of rocks. And he goes like, well, you did it. You finally got your big break and everything, because he gives them the dragon's eye for his thing. And then the dragon's eye just like awakens, and now the snails that was written on the stone becomes erased. And then the elf comes over, goes like, oh, your friend's waiting for you. I'm like, shut the fuck up. He did not just become fucking back alive. Like, get the fuck out of here. Yeah. I was just like, you mean to tell me that we had this big, huge emotional moment? Like, he dies, and then he gets thrown off the freaking roof, and now he's gone. And then it's just like, okay, now what are we supposed to do? And then
at the end of it, make this big long speech like, "Yep, you got it. Like, you got your treasure. You got what you wanted. Blah blah blah." And then it's all like, "Oh, by the way, your friend's alive. We just have to go get him." And then they teleport by turning into lights, and then they all like scatter.
Yeah,
and I'm
a
like,
really weird ending.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, do we get to see him again? Do we get to see them being like together? Nope, it just ends.
Yep, it just
and
ends.
and especially with this one, I don't know because like you sent me the links for all of these. Like the second one you can find on YouTube, so like that. Let's make that be clear. And I thought it was funny because it was added 5 months ago, and I was just like, okay, that's funny. But the other thing that I noted was like it just says the end.
Yeah.
At the end of it, and I was
and
all
there's
like,
no credits.
Is that
I think,
part of
I
it
think that's
or not?
the YouTube video because like they don't roll credits at the end either.
Yeah,
it just says the end. And
right.
Very
and I was
abruptly,
thinking it was like
off.
a PowerPoint, like the end, because it just fades in, and I'm all like, okay, so either this was part of the movie or it wasn't, and they just like cut that bit out.
I think they cut out. I think they cut out the credits and just put their own the end title screen at that. Cause
yeah,
I was confused by that too. I was like, this seems very abrupt and not part of the movie at all. Like the font's different, like everything. Yeah,
it's just a little weird.
Yeah.
So
and then I don't know, do we want to just breeze to the third one real quick through the third one since this is the one that you didn't watch, right?
Yeah, I didn't watch this one, but yeah, if you want to speed run through it, if you don't have a lot,
through it.
So.
It's a very 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 bad movie. This one is D&D 3: The Book of Vile Darkness. So basically, the Book of Vile Darkness is just this very evil book that makes everybody evil that reads it or touches it or whatever. And it created centuries of war. This Knights of the New Sun, who worship the god Pelor, who's the god of light, rise up, are able to defeat the book by separating it into 3 pieces. And they are destroy the blood. They think because the book is 3 parts. It's the blood, which is the ink, the pages, and then the cover. The cover's made of bones. The pages are made of skin, and the ink is made of blood. So, but they are able to destroy the blood. And they're like, okay, this can never come back or whatever.
Right. So it's kind of, that reminds me of like the Necronomicon from the Evil Dead franchise.
It's 100% the Necronomicon. Just
that's what I thought. Yeah, because like they do have a Necronomicon in D&D lore, but it's not like how it is in Evil Dead. So it's a little different. I mean, obviously it could raise the dead back to life and stuff like that, and like you can control them and whatnot as like an undead army essentially.
Yep. Instead
of just saying an incantation and then all of a sudden now the dead are alive. Yeah. So and trying to kill you. So.
But yeah. So anyways, years and years and years go by.
What are you doing? Quit licking that cable.
Cat's trying to eat a cable.
Yeah, he's always licking my charging cable for my laptop. Hey. I know what you're gonna do there, buddy. It's not gonna work. Why are you so weird? Why are you like this?
Cats are weird. Anyways, so this Order of Knights is now they don't have the favor of their god Pelor anymore. Hundreds of years into the future, they can't gain power from him anymore. Main character is just knighted into this order. They're ambushed. Everybody's dead except for him, basically. He joins this party trying to put the book back together or something like that to like try and sneak among them and try and thwart their plan. But in order to join them, he has to kill somebody. So he kills this elf that they're traveling with. So yeah, they're searching for like a treasure in a dragon's cave, and they kill a dragon, which the main character like gets the final blow, earns their trust that way. Basically, then they go to a village with the dragon's prisoners, and the book is used. Like the book comes back somehow, and then They have the main characters, the evil people have the main characters like dad held prisoner or something. The main character's dad's blood is used to as the new ink. But the main character is finally able to use the light of his god, the god of this order of knights, to destroy the book. And it's that's the main plot going through. Not a ton of D&D references. Not it was just kind of very boring. It was it was not keeping me entertained.
Right.
I noticed myself just constantly looking at my phone. I was watching it yesterday, and I was like, let me do today's Wordle on my New York Times app, because that's how boring it was.
Right.
So not much really to talk about there, but yeah. A couple of cool references, like in the Book of Isle of Darkness itself. And the main character gets a Vorpal sword at one point, which is a sword in D&D that if you roll a critical, you automatically decapitate your enemies.
Oh, nice.
Which is pretty rad. But other than that, pretty boring movie.
Yeah, because
not very good.
I don't remember if I said this at the top of the show or like before we started recording, but like, because I was talking to you about like, oh yeah, I couldn't find this on anything. Like you send me the link and like you can stream it off to cast on your TV, but I'm like, my TV in here can't do that, and like I didn't want to watch it out there because I just didn't want to do that. Yeah. But I'm just like, okay, well, I'm not. Yeah, I'm like, and I'm not gonna rent it because it's also not available on streaming. Like
it's not available on streaming. It's not even available on digital. You can't even like find it anywhere to buy it except for like on eBay, and it's like a DVD from 15 years ago. So
right, it's like I'd rather not buy this movie if I'm not gonna actually like it.
Yeah, I found it on like one of those like watch movies free online. Like that was the only place I could find it. Like not endorsing pirating movies, but when that's the only way to find the media.
Right.
That's what I had to do.
Yeah. And then we'll go down the last one. So, because the only two that I have stuff for is the first one and the newest one with Chris Pine. Yep. So, basically, now we have Dungeons and Dragons Among Thieves.
Yep. Honor Among Thieves.
Yeah, Honor Among Thieves. And the whole thing is just about a charming thief and a band of unlikely adventurers embark on an epic quest to retrieve a lost relic, but things go dangerously awry when they run afoul of the wrong people. Because essentially, when we first realize what's happening in the movie is that, like, you have the thief, who's also the bard, and then you got a barbarian, you've got the mage, and you've got a shapeshifter. I think
druid.
Yeah, druid. Because I think that's about it, isn't it?
I think that's the party.
Like it's just a group of four, and then there was also
they have a paladin join them shortly, briefly.
Yeah, and then like in the beginning they did have a paladin, and then they also had a second thief as well. Being Hugh Grant, who's also in this movie. But like you have all 6 of these characters, and like they're trying to get this relic, and the mage uses a time stopping spell to where it expands outward and it stops time that's in this bubble, and the barbarian and Chris Pine, they're both trapped in it, so then they get caught. Versus
they get caught and sent to jail. Yeah,
because all he wanted was the relic, but then she ends up killing soldiers, and he goes like, that's our number one rule, is that we don't kill or harm people. Yep. And then that's what basically got them into being thrown in jail, of course, besides thievery. But basically they take the rap, and then he gives the relic to Hugh Grant's character and tells him like, okay, take this and take care of my daughter. And then they're in jail for like, what was it, like 2 years or something like that, if I remember.
Something like that, yeah.
And then the whole time they break out, they go to find him, and now him and the mage are together in cahoots, and because now he basically is like the super wealthy like con man, essentially, is what he is.
Yeah, he's like made himself into like a feudal lord.
Yeah. And then he finally sees his daughter, and then what ends up happening is that like Hugh Grant is telling her that like, oh yeah, like your father's a thief and all this bunch of stuff. Like he didn't really come here to see you. He came here for the relic,
right?
Which is a relic of resurrection.
Yeah,
because he wants to bring back his wife, her mom.
Yep.
And that's the whole reason why that they wanted to do this. And then,
but Hugh Grant's character has convinced the daughter that he's only there for wealth. He's not there like she doesn't understand that he's trying to resurrect her mom.
Yeah. So. But yeah, that's basically the whole premise of it and stuff. And like we'll go down the list of writers, directors, stars, and stuff like that. So we got directors John Francis Daly and Jonathan Goldstein. Jonathan Goldstein also wrote it, as well as John Francis Daly and Michael Gilio, however you pronounce his last name. And then just going down a few of like the top billed people, we got Chris Pine, like I mentioned. We got Michelle Rodriguez, who plays as the Barbarian. We got Regé Jean Page, Justice Smith, Sophia Lillis, Hugh Grant, like I mentioned already, Chloe Coleman, Daisy Head. I think that's about the top few people. Which there's a cameo, which I will get to here pretty soon, but got only 2 taglines for this one. Who needs heroes when you have thieves? Because of course they're all thieves. Hijinks. And no experience necessary, because honestly they're just flying at the seat of their pants throughout this whole thing. So that's pretty much the only thing. Other than that, we'll go ahead and just go through the stuff that I really liked. Because in the beginning he's given his backstory, because like they're chipping away at ice cubes. And they were like, yeah, so we're gonna get our hearing today. And then they were like, oh, I wonder where this person's at. Yeah. So like it's supposed to be like 4 of them, and they're like
a parole hearing.
Yeah, it's a parole hearing, and so they're like, okay, like we're gonna see what you've learned, basically. And so he's like giving his backstory from when he was a noble guy in the village, and then after his wife dies, because of course when you just start catching bad guys, you kind of make a few enemies. And then so like one of the enemies that he made went to his house and killed his wife. So so he's going on this backstory, and then he keeps cutting it out, and he goes like, I'm sorry, is like this person supposed to be here?
One of the parole board members is not there.
And like they were worried that he would get frozen solid, because like they're basically on like an ice. It kind of just makes it look like it's Hoth from Star Wars, essentially.
It's in the frozen wastes with this prison.
Like even if you escape, there's nowhere to go. So and so like he just keeps going on with his backstory. They're like, get on with it, and he goes like, okay, I'm sorry. And so at one point when he goes back, I think it's the 3rd time he goes back to continue his backstory, he goes back to, so like I was a pretty good guy, blah blah blah, and then he goes like, you went too far, and he goes like, oh sorry. Like he's basically stalling for a time for this last person to come in. And then he finally comes in. And he's a giant bird.
He's an Aarakocra. Is the species name in D&D.
And then they're like, all right, cool. So then they just grab him, and then they bust through the window because he's a bird, and they're like, you better fly, otherwise we're all gonna die. And then they basically get away, and when they jump out the window, I don't remember what he was off the top of my head now, but like he goes like, but we approved your parole,
so they were going to be approved for parole anyways, so them escaping was completely unnecessary anyways. It's just hilarious.
And now they're on the run.
But we approved your pardon,
which like is dumb, but they go through this village, I think, because then they go to the town to go and get his daughter back and everything.
Right.
And then he goes like, well, you guys are wanted now.
Yeah.
So,
we're gonna
have to
we're gonna imprison
basically-
you. Yeah.
But they end up like going down this alleyway and like they're actually going to chop their heads off.
Yep.
And so she's distracting him by like asking like, oh, what kind of an axe is that? Like, what do you use for it?
Yeah.
to,
What
like,
kind
clean it?
of what kind of oil do you use for that axe?
And so while she's distracting him, she's like trying to peel the stone out of the ground, and so
like the brick.
the brick out of the ground, and so she finally gets it out, and he goes like, and so she goes like, okay, that's all my questions, you can chop my head off. And he goes like, yep, chop away. So they bow their heads, and then he's about to chop her head off, stops it with the brick. And I was like, okay, this is actually a pretty cool scene because she's kicking the shit out of all of these knights. He's still trying to cut the rope off his hands.
Yep.
And especially where he's on the ground now, and like he's using the corner of the step, just trying to get it. And so he goes like, yep, we got him now.
Yeah,
so
we got
just,
him. We got him
like,
now. And she's like busy beating the crap out of all of these other guys.
Yeah, and I'm like, it's so funny.
Yeah, it's a really good comedic moment.
Yeah, like basically this whole movie is like an action comedy because it's like, and it's so well done too.
Yeah, it's
when
well
they did
written.
it.
It's well
So
like
it's pretty smart.
yeah.
Comedy as well. It's not just like, haha, you said poopy, like
Yeah.
nothing like that. But it also doesn't go over your head either with its comedic effect either. It's all like kind of like how most of the action comedies are now. So that's basically what it is. And then they're trying to get their team back together so that way they can go back to the town to get the talisman and the daughter.
Yep.
So, and then they're like, okay, let's get the whole squad back together. And we get the mage.
Yeah.
And he's like doing this like magician thing.
Yeah, he's doing like a magic show, but
Yeah,
really
that's
he's
what it
like
is.
fleecing all these people of their valuables. He's
Right.
like stealing all of their stuff, like their bracelets and their watches and everything. He's stealing
Yeah, all
it
their
from,
gold.
Yeah, all
and
their
stuff.
gold and stuff.
And it's funny because he goes like, "Oh yeah, do you think that a candle can like get the better of me? I don't think so." Like his fingers on fire, and then he goes like, "Oh, like." Do you guys want to smell fresh cut grass? Who doesn't love the smell of fresh cut grass? And
Yeah.
like he does a spell, and
Yeah.
you see this green smoke just fade, and then it's all like, "Do you smell that? That's the smell of fresh cut grass."
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that was pretty funny. And like,
Yeah, so the spells he uses there is Produce Flame, which is a cantrip, and
Yeah.
then Prestidigitation, which is also a cantrip. So very low-level spells, very easy to
Right.
do in the D&D universe.
yeah, and then they come in, and you just see all of this gold being basically taken out of these people's pockets into a giant ball of possessions, and then he sees them. The ball drops because he loses his concentration on it.
Yep, he sees the
So
Chris Pine and Michelle Rodriguez's characters walk in. Yeah, loses concentration.
the whole thing falls, and then all of a
Yep.
sudden the village people are like, "Hey, he's trying to pickpocket us," and he goes
Yep.
like, "No, I'm not." And then they're like trying to beat him up, and
Yeah.
he gets out of there by casting a spell of levitation that levitates all of them. Then he drops them, and then he goes back up out of the skylight, and then he just falls back onto the roof, and then falls into Michelle Rodriguez's
Yes.
arms. And so she goes like, "Okay, you ready to go?" And he goes like, "Yeah, we can leave."
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely some kind of like wild magic surge or something. Like I think he's supposed to be like a wild magic sorcerer.
Yeah, like he
Like
can control it,
Yeah, he
but
can't fully.
he can't.
Yeah, he can't fully control it all the time. Yeah.
Right, because like of how drastic it was for them just to be floating, and then all of a sudden he says the cantation again, and then it drops them, and then he's about ready to get like basically his shit rocked, and he does it again, but then this time he goes flying.
Yeah.
And it's only him.
Yeah.
Everybody else stays in place, but he just shoots up.
Yep.
So, but then they're like telling him the plan, like this is what we're gonna do, blah blah blah, and he goes like, "Okay, well we're gonna have to go rescue my ex," being the shapeshifter.
Yeah, the druid.
Yeah. And so he goes like, so they go and they find her, and she's basically roped up, and they're all like, "Okay, like is that her that we need to rescue?" And he goes like, "No, that's not her." And then it turns out that it's actually the knight's horse that he was on that is actually her, and and so she transforms into an owlbear, and I'm like, okay, that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
like that was awesome. And then she rescues her friend, and then just basically gets out of there by kicking the shit out of all the knights, and then they follow them, and they're like, hey, we need you a part of our team to like get this plan in motion. And cutting more forward into the movie, I don't remember specifically how we got to this point off the top of my head, but like they, because she wants to make amends, or no, she goes to see her ex, Michelle Rodriguez, because she goes back to her ex,
who's a halfling.
And wouldn't you know it, who answers the door is a very, very short Bradley Cooper. I thought that was hilarious.
Olga.
I'm like, wait a second, is that Bradley Cooper? And then I took a second look, and I'm like, it is Bradley Cooper.
Yeah,
like, what the
very
heck?
Tiny Bradley Cooper.
So,
he's playing a halfling.
I'm like, that's super funny. And they start talking about like their relationship, and so she left her village, or she was like pushed out of her village or something like that, and so like she was alone, and then so they end up together, and she goes like, hey, I see that you still have that walking stick that I gave you. And he goes like, yeah, I just don't use it anymore. You can take it with you if you want, because like my now new girlfriend that we've been dating for like a year, like doesn't want me to have it anymore, or whatever it is. And so she goes like, oh, okay. And then she walks in, and so she's basically the same version of her being another
it's
barbarian.
another very, very large muscular woman.
And so like she's bigger than Michelle Rodriguez, but like I just think that's funny. I'm like, so basically you just wanted another version of your ex. Like, that's all that this is. And it's funny because he goes like, yeah, like you left, so I needed something to fill that void. Like I wanted to start a family with you, like you were my family, and then you left, so my family left, and now I needed a new family. So, and she takes the staff with her, and they find one of the guys, because they find out like, oh yeah, we need this helmet to get passed into the town, into the vault or whatever. There's like a special vault where the key or the artifact is being held, the talisman thing. And they're like, okay, like how can we get the helmet? So then they're like, okay, well, we need to resurrect dead people that were in the battle, and you can only ask them 5 questions. And then they are permanently dead. They use the necromancy spell Speak with the Dead, and you're only allowed a certain amount of questions. So then there's a very funny scene where, you know, they're accidentally asking questions that they're not meaning to. And he goes like, was that a question? He goes like, yes. And he goes like, no, I wasn't asking you. Like, and then he goes like, okay, I'm trying to get this, okay? And then he goes like, yes. And then he dies. And then he goes like, why would you say okay at the end of that?
Only answer when I talk to you, okay?
Yes.
Why did you say okay at the end of that?
I didn't.
Fantastic. Where's the shovel?
Like,
so they have to dig up another guy, and then
it just leads into one after the other. They're like, okay, you were at this battle, yes? And they're like, yeah. And he goes like, okay, like, what did you do? Go off onto this backstory about the battle, and then he talks about how he died, and he goes like, okay, where was the helmet? And he goes like, oh yeah, like this person had it, as far as I'm aware. And then it's like, okay, so then they're like, well, you need to ask him a couple more questions. And he goes like, why? And he goes like, otherwise he's still just going to be alive and he's never going to be dead. He goes like, okay, what's your favorite color? It's like, green. He goes like, okay, what's your favorite dish? And he goes like, oh, it's like this. And he goes like, okay, see, there you go. And so then they just keep digging up dead bodies to ask him all these questions, and especially where they ask the brother of the main guy that they're looking for. And he goes like, yeah, like I was having a relaxing bath before battle, and then I got out of the tub and I slipped on a rock and then I died. And he goes like, but you were in the battle, yeah? And he goes like, no, I slipped and fell and died. And he goes like, oh, well then what the hell? And then they just leave him there.
They just leave him.
As I stepped out my bath, my foot slipped on the stone.
And then you went into the battle?
No, I died.
And then they find out that, like, okay, now we have to go find this guy because he knows where the helmet's at.
And this is where the paladin enters.
Yeah. He's used to be a bad paladin, right?
No, so he escaped. So he's a Thayan, and the Thayans are like this evil group of humans that like practice necromancy and like all this other kind of crazy stuff. They have like very radical beliefs. It's kind of like a cult.
Yeah.
The Thayan cult, basically. But he escaped that as a child, but it killed the main evil Thayan guy. I think his name's like Zax Tram or something like that. Used a spell to turn all these people into like undead thralls, basically.
Right.
It killed this paladin's parents, but he was able to get away.
Yeah. Because like I noticed that like just right below his hairline he had like the tattoo.
Yeah.
So it's
which
like,
I think
okay.
that like Thayans just get that like like as children or something. But
Yeah. Because I
it's
know
like a
that
weird
the
cultural thing.
Because I know that the main girl that's with Hugh Grant.
Yeah, Hugh Grant
she's the evil.
Yeah.
one.
Hugh Grant has an associate who's like an evil Thayan mage.
Yeah, and like that was the one that they got when they were originally doing the heist to get the talisman.
Yeah.
And then caused them to get caught.
Yep.
But yeah, so he goes like, okay, I know where the helmet's at. It's in this place.
It's in the Underdark, so they have to go to the Underdark. They end up like, we see like some classic Underdark denizens down here. We see the intellect devourers, which are like little brains with legs that wander around. And then they find the helmet, but they're ambushed by some Thayans.
Right.
That can't die.
Yeah, and before that, like he's like it's just a straight shot to get the helmet because they're on the bridge.
Right, but the
bridge and then he's like talking about this whole convoluted thing about like
how you cross the bridge,
because
it's trapped.
Yeah, and so the lesser mage steps on one stone and then the
whole
bridge
bridge collapses.
And then he's all like, I didn't realize that would have made it start to collapse, so that's on me.
Yeah.
And then they start coming up with a plan to get across,
but it turns out the
Michelle,
staff that she got from her halfling ex is a hither-thither staff, which creates portals.
Yeah, to get
very
from
much
here to there.
Yeah, very much like the Portal video games style.
Yeah, and it only has like what, a quarter of a mile distance,
something like that.
So,
but it was enough to get across.
Right.
So,
and then they get the helmet, and then now they go back to the town, and they're like, well, we can't just walk in. So, because now they know that we're coming.
Yeah.
Because they have this plan to find out what's really going on, and I like can't ever remember like the shapeshifter name.
I can't remember her name, but she's the druid.
Yeah, the druid, but yeah, she is a fly basically on the wall, and the mage finds out that she's there. And so, like, they're trying to basically kill her trying to escape.
Yeah, a very cool chase scene where she, like, turns into a deer and a couple of other things as she's, like, running through the streets.
Yeah, because, like, she turns into a fly, then she turns into a rat, then she gets into a knight's armor that's sitting off to the side, and then so she gets back to normal. And it's funny because she, like, puts the helmet down, like, the face mask down, and so she walks by a soldier, and so she like waves, and he waves back, and then gets a few feet away, and he turns around and he goes like, wait a second, and then they start chasing her, and he's about to chop off her head. She turns back into a rat, she runs out, and then she trying to remember, but I remember she gets outside, she turns into like a hawk, and then they're shooting fire arrows at her, and then she hits a flag, falls into a chimney, turns into a cat. Then she turns back into normal in front of this family who's eating food, and then grabs one of their cloaks, walks out, and then she finds like these. They're supposed to, like, I think that they look like dodos, just like a very tall thing of dodos, and then she turns into one of them, and I'm like, they don't know what you look like. You could have just stayed like that.
Stayed you, yeah.
So, but she sees them and go like, hey, I'm going to turn into you now. And then they find out that one of them is her. And then she turns into the deer. And then so she like scoots underneath the
Yeah, there's like
gate.
a gate that's closing, and she's able to get underneath and escape.
And so like they managed to escape and everything, and so like now they devise a plan to get in. And this was hilarious because Chris Pine distracts the guards by singing a song, and then they're going behind them, and then all of a sudden Chris Pine starts like tweaking out, and then his face starts morphing
melting
and stuff.
What madness is this?
And it was just super hilarious. And they're like, "What are you doing?" And he goes like, "My foot's stuck. I can't concentrate."
Yeah.
So then they like realize that it's illusion, and then they're like, "Hey, like there they are." So then they get him, and they finally get into the castle for him to get his daughter.
Right.
And he finally like talks with her and stuff, but it turns out it's the mage that she like turned into the daughter.
Yeah.
And then now he's been wrapped up in like octopus tentacles, and then he goes like, Hugh Grant's like, "Okay, well, we're just gonna kill you now." And he just goes like, "Well, why don't we fight in the tournament? Why don't we do that?" He goes like, "Nah, I'd rather just kill you now. I'm not gonna be in the room when you die, but I just want to kill you." And so he goes like, "No, like let us have a chance to fight for our lives." He goes like, "Okay." So then but she's on his side of going like, "No, let's put them in there."
Yeah.
Because she has a reason to have all these people there in the first place.
Yeah.
And
she's trying to fill the arena to cast that same spell that like Zam or Zax or whatever to turn all these people into undead thralls. She wants to do that in the arena.
Right. And then now they're in the arena, and then they have to go through a maze basically to get to the center where this cage is, where they will live. And while they're going through this, there's chests scattered around the maze, and so like they have weapons and stuff like that.
Weapons or
one
like
of the
items,
one of the things that I liked was when Michelle Rodriguez she opens one of the chests and turns out it's a mimic, and I'm like, okay, that was actually really cool.
Yeah, mimic.
I'm like, one of these has to be a mimic.
Yeah, the mimic scene was pretty rad.
Yeah. And then so they get to the center of the cage, and then so Chris Pine goes like, "No, like if we survive, they're just going to have us keep doing challenges again and again and again until like we die, essentially." And so he goes like, "We need to figure out a plan." So then she discovers a plan to actually go like, there's the gelatin block.
Yeah,
that's a trap.
The gelatinous cube, or the God, what's it actually called? It's a type of monster in D&D.
Yeah.
But it's basically a big cube of acid that's
just gonna eat at you.
Yeah, that's gonna eat at you, and they like slowly follow you.
Yeah.
Which is terrifying.
Right.
But yeah, so they, instead of getting in the cage, they all get in the ooze.
Yeah.
And then pull themselves out after it is dropped down below the arena, so they can escape through the back tunnels.
Which is very smart on her end, because she goes like, "I got an idea. You may not like it," but then when they all run in there, she manages to get her finger, just like the top knuckle, if not half of her finger, like out, and so she turns into a snake after they go under the ground.
Yep.
And then so she's able to slither out, and then she's going to pull them out one by one and stuff. So I thought that was actually pretty smart to do. And then they get all their stuff back. They get back up to Hugh Grant and everything, and
who's making off in a boat with all the gold.
Yeah. And then they trap him because they're like, "Hey, like, are you going somewhere?" And and like holds the daughter up at knife point and goes like, "Yeah, like I will do anything to like escape. Like, you have no idea."
Yeah. Hugh Grant's character threatens to kill main character's daughter.
Yeah.
Because he's a slime ball.
Right. And so they're like, "Okay, you know what? You can have it, blah, 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 whatever." And then they get off the boat. He gets back on. And then, because his original thing was to just have the hither tither portal open for the treasure.
Yep.
And so that's where all the treasure ends up, is like back in the village or the town.
Yep.
And now that will have everybody leave.
Yeah,
because
they use like the hither thither on the bottom of the boat, and then like on a blimp that's like circling the arena. So all the treasure starts falling out outside of the arena.
And this whole time she's having the incantation to start turning them into
turning them to undead thralls or whatever.
Yeah. And that requires a lot of people. So then everybody realizes that, like, hey, look, the blimp is like throwing out money and gold. So then they leave. And so she stops her incantation. She goes like, wait, what the hell is happening? This isn't supposed to happen. And then they kind of like, fight her and stop her. But like the last bit that I had about it was like that she turns into an owl bear again and basically Hulk smashes her. Like and throws her and everything. And I'm like, that was actually pretty funny. Like just doing that whole bit.
I think you got her.
And then while in the midst of the fight, Michelle Rodriguez gets stabbed.
They're able to defeat the evil witch lady, but Michelle's character gets stabbed and is dying because it's like some kind of like special poison blade or something.
Yeah, something like that. And like there's no like medicine or anything like that can cure her. Like she's just gonna die.
It's just like uncurable poison. She's just gonna die.
And then he now needs to choose either to bring back his wife or bring back her. And flashes back to his daughter saying like, no, don't go, like I need you. And then it's like, ever since she was a baby, she's always been there.
Michelle
every
Rodriguez's
step of the way
has really kind of been the mom the whole time.
And then versus he wants his wife back. It's all like, okay, but who does he need more, Michelle Rodriguez or his wife? So,
and who does his daughter need more?
Right. And that's the main thing, because like when he first is talking to his quote unquote daughter, who's like the mage that turns into the daughter, he goes like, I'm trying to bring back your mom, my wife. And because like I miss her, and like, I really want her to like see you and meet you and get to know you and blah blah blah. But it's like, really, you don't need to do that, because Michelle Rodriguez was basically her
Being
mom.
The mom,
So, and they basically live happily ever ever. They're knighted at the end. So, and
which is kind of a throwback to the first movie again,
right?
Where the thief gets knighted at the end of the movie.
So, but that was the end of the last Dungeons and Dragons movie. And that was the end of the Gauntlet. Now that we're about an hour and a half in. So usually it's about an hour or so. But if it's running a little long, it's an hour and a half. But not too bad for talking about four movies back to back. So, and then
we got to do the rip by skip, right?
Yep. I was just going to say, now is the time where we will give our consensus on the movies of being rent, buy, or skip. Rent, of course, means that you'll just occasionally watch it every so often when you get the chance to. Buying is like, hey, I want this movie. I want to continue to keep watching it, so I'm going to buy it and I'm going to put it on my shelf. Skip is just like, don't even waste your time. It's not worth it. Like, all that stuff. So, since you are the guest, I'll have you go first. You can go back to back to back to back.
I think I'll run through all four of them with my take. The first D&D movie, I will say, if you are a fan of D&D, it's probably a rent.
I mean, it's all right. Like,
okay.
Otherwise, it's probably a skip.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
Right.
And I would say the same thing with the second film. Rent, if you are a D&D fan, because there's lots of fun D&D references in it.
I mean, it's all right. Like,
but skip if you're not a D&D fan, because it is just not a great movie overall.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
Right.
The third one, Book of Vile Darkness, I'm going to say is a skip no matter what.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
Yeah.
Very bad movie.
And also, given the fact that you can literally not watch it unless you literally buy a DVD.
Yeah, you have to buy
you
a
have
DVD
to
off
you have to
eBay.
discover it in the wild.
Yeah.
Or buy it online from like eBay or something.
Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. That's a buy for me, man.
Fuck
Nice.
I love that movie. It's really funny. I actually do own it, and I've watched it multiple times.
Nice.
So definitely a buy for me.
Nice. Yeah. For me, I would definitely say the first one is a rent. Hey, what are you doing, my guy? Don't get on my laptop. But yeah, I would definitely say the first one's a rent. Just
I mean, it's all right. Like,
because I actually enjoyed it as much as I did. The second one, I would say that it's a skip
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
because honestly, it's just really bad.
Yep.
The story is just like incoherent
Yeah.
at times. The CGI is just even worse than the
Yep.
first one. And like it was just confusing because, like I said, it was just like you got Domador who's back, who
Yep.
apparently was like in this orb, and it's like, but he died in the first one, so that's confusing. So it's
Yeah.
like just skip it entirely. Third one, since I never even watched it, but you can't even watch it anyway, that's
Yeah.
another skip.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
But then yeah, I would have to say that it's like the last one is borderline rent and skip, or not rent and skip, rent and buy.
I mean, it's all right. Like,
Because it's all like, you know, it's enjoyable enough,
Yeah.
and it doesn't play too much into the D&D lore
Yeah.
as often, because it's not ham-fisting you with
Yeah,
information.
100%. Yeah.
And like, you know, it's just a fun movie.
Yeah.
It's an action comedy.
It's
like,
if you like action adventure and you like comedy, you're gonna like that movie.
yeah.
So
And it's all like, just because it has D&D attached to it doesn't mean anything. Like,
Yeah, no.
it's still a good time.
it's a good fantasy
and
fantasy
like
film.
especially when me and JK we were talking about Borderlands, it's all like Borderlands would be a pretty cool sci-fi movie,
Yeah.
but you have Borderlands slapped over it. It's like it doesn't
So
make it that good
it comes with
enough
all those
movie.
connotations of
Yeah.
the series itself, and they
Right.
failed to meet the
giving
expectations of
giving
fans of that
the
series.
backdrop, giving the backstory about these characters
Yep.
and what they're doing, and like the Borderlands and everything. It's just like it doesn't make that much of a good movie. But given the fact that this is actually a pretty good Dungeons and Dragons movie entirety,
Yep.
just makes it even better.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And like especially it just being a good fantasy movie just in general with Dungeons and Dragons just slapped over it.
Yeah.
That's what you need to do, is like make a good sci-fi movie, just slap this over it and just be true to the source material, and
Yep.
that's all you need to do.
Yeah,
So-
as long as you're true to the source material, you know, like people aren't going to come for you. But yeah,
Yeah.
Well, in Borderlands, I feel like that's a different subject because that,
Oh,
that
100%.
feels like it was 100% a money grab. Like
Oh, yeah.
when I was watching it with JK, there was a scene where you can see one of the crew members, like they still they have like the mask on and everything for like
Yeah.
COVID precautions and stuff,
Right.
and like it's when they're opening the hatch, you can see the crew member.
Oh yeah, I
open the
remember
hatch.
that.
Yeah, and I
yeah,
was just
you
like,
could see him
"Dude,
peeking out a little bit, and I'm
dude,
like,
what
why
the
do you?
heck?"
And it was kind of like
You guys
with-
couldn't catch that in editing,
Right,
like,
and it's like the same thing for like Dungeons and Dragons, but Game of Thrones, where it was like one of the last seasons, either the second
yeah,
to last
the
or like the
Starbucks cup.
the Starbucks cup being on set, or it's like in Braveheart, because I
just
recently heard about
sloppy.
this, where it's all like you have just the foreground where it's like Mel Gibson doing his whole speech.
Yep.
It's all like they'll never take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. But then you see people in the background that are like dressed up in like casual clothing.
Yep.
And it's just like,
How
what
did
are you
this make
doing?
it in? Yeah.
It's all like, what the heck? But
Yep.
obviously, certain things get overlooked because you're not looking at that stuff.
Yeah.
So,
But
But,
yeah,
um,
I'm really glad that Honor Among Thieves like stayed pretty true to the source material. I think it did it justice, and just
goodbye.
made for a really entertaining movie in general.
yeah, because like out of all of them, the three that I watched, this one was the best.
No, it's
for
definitely
sure.
the best out of all of them,
So,
for sure.
But now we'll talk about suggested people, and then we'll call this an episode. So I got the first movie up. I just decided to do 10-star reviews, just because it's all like, you know, the first movie didn't get as much praise as it had at
Yep.
the time, and I'm pretty sure now it's gotten more praise because, like, you know, D&D is now just a big huge pop culture thing.
Oh yeah,
entirety. So
yeah, it's much more relevant in the general zeitgeist.
right. And so first one we have up is do the first movie. I only got the first movie and the last movie that
That's
that came up. So, one of the most underrated movies ever. After reading some of the first reviews of this movie, I thought it would be horrible, but having played the role-playing game many years ago, I decided to see it anyway. I was amazed the special effects and visual artwork were some of the best I had ever seen, and from everything I remember, the characters stayed within their gameplay roles. This story is both interesting and compelling with several unexpected plot twists and an unexpected ending. That's a huge mouthful. If this movie is a measure of movie critics, I think this may be the last time I read their reviews. If I had followed their advice and saved the ticket price, I would have missed a great cinema experience. Now, keep in mind, this was also a review back in 2000.
Yeah.
So the same year this movie was dropped.
Yeah.
So definitely having that sort of mindset is definitely a good time for sure.
Yeah.
So
yeah, well, yeah, you shouldn't listen to what other people tell you to like.
No.
Like you can listen to other people and their opinions and base your opinions on others' opinions as well. But like, just going and seeing the thing is gonna be the best way to form your own opinions on something.
Yeah, because like especially right now, I've heard mixed reviews on the Captain America movie. And it's
Right.
all like, I don't care. I'm still going to go watch it just because then I'm a big Marvel fanboy as it is. But besides that, it's like, I've never really missed a Marvel movie in theaters.
Yeah.
Which is very surprising because I'm all like, especially for these recent ones that have come out in the last like 5-10 years, something like that. It's all like, some of them fell off, but it's all like,
Yeah.
I need, like, especially Captain Marvel, like the second one that I watched.
Yeah.
I was all like, I'm just watching this just to see what happens next. Like,
Yeah.
that's all that I'm doing. Like, that's why I'm
you're
here.
just kind of going through the motions at that point.
Yeah. And it's all like, cool. I don't give a flying heck what happens throughout this whole movie. I just want to see the end credit scene, what it sets up.
Yep.
It's like, oh, this was a big payoff. I can't wait to see what happens with the X-Men. But it's like, okay. And also at the same time, it's like, because I'm a big Marvel fanboy as it is with the movies, with the MCU, it's like, okay, I don't want any spoilers. So
Yeah.
I keep seeing TikToks and like, especially people talking about it on social media. And I'm like, I don't want to know anything before I go and watch it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, granted, it's been out for a week now, but it's all like,
Yeah.
I get that. Like, there's no way of escaping that sort of thing.
I've read like that it's getting kind of blasted in reviews.
Right.
But Jeremy, he went to see it and he thought it was good. So
Yeah, because like I like the Captain America movies in general.
Yeah.
Like the second one is by far my favorite. It's still in my top 5 movies of the whole MCU entirely. And even my wife, she was just like, yeah, like I would actually like to go and check this out because it definitely seems interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm like, for sure. And like,
And who doesn't want to see a big red Harrison Ford?
right, exactly.
Since when were they red?
And like also given the fact that like a lot of people just don't like Anthony Mackie being Captain America.
Yeah.
And it's all like, it has that duality of going like, okay, is it because that he's black or is it because that he doesn't do a good enough job for Captain America? And for him, it's all like, I going off into a tiny bit of a tangent here with that being said, but I can understand him not being Captain America because he was Falcon. He's never
Right.
been Captain America before this.
Yeah.
Like, this is his first time being Captain America. So it's like, did you think that Chris Evans being Captain America, did you think that he was just like automatically Captain America off the bat? No. Like, he was Stars and Spangled Man, like
Yeah.
in the original.
Yeah.
And then he went to war and he fought in World War II and fought Hydra soldiers.
Yeah.
And taken down the Red Skull. So it's all like he became that mantle
Right.
because of that. And it's all like he was just synonymous because that was just history. And because now you have more real world applications for these movies, now you have that and now in the real world instead of the movie world. So, but it's like, yeah, I don't get that sort of
Yeah.
aspect of it. So now if people would explain why that they don't like him, I can
Right.
understand.
Well,
I
see,
can level with it,
Like,
I should say.
I was like, I I think he's doing fine as Captain America. Like I watched like Falcon and Winter Soldier, and
Yeah, and that was good, really good.
Really good in that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like a lot of people just don't like change, and
Right. They're
or,
like,
or,
"Oh, I
or
want-"
they're just straight up racist,
Right.
And they're like, I don't want my Captain America to be black or whatever, you
Right.
know?
But it's funny too because they're following the formula of
Right.
the comics, because Sam does turn into Captain America.
Yep.
Like, because, and it's just like in the comics where Steve Rogers becomes super old and then he gives up the mantle of being Captain America
Yep.
to Sam Wilson
Yep.
being
It's
the new
following
Cap.
the comics, like,
So, and like
yeah.
that's what general audiences doesn't understand. They're like, why did they choose Falcon to be Captain America? Why not Bucky? It's like, because it follows the comics.
Yeah,
They're following the mainstream of
It's already
comics.
happened, bro. It's
Yeah.
already happened. Read the comics.
Yeah. So I'm like, I don't get that. But
Yeah.
enough of the Marvel tangent. We got one more review, and then we will basically leave. Fun and entertaining. Another 10-star review for the last Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves movie. As a fan of D&D for 40 years, I could finally say they made an excellent D&D movie. I won't give away spoilers, but I will say they added a lot of classic D&D stuff in there for fans to get excited about, but it's fun and entertaining to where people who know nothing about D&D can still enjoy it. Like me, for instance. The acting is solid, the story is good, and they have a great use of CGI. Just enough to where it doesn't take over the film. It's rare that movies/shows keep my attention, but this one did, as it didn't have any dull moments. The characters all had their purposes, and I thought they did a good job of bonding the main characters, Edgin and Holga. I'll definitely be seeing it again. And I would actually have to agree. Like,
Yeah, that's a hard agree for me as
the
well.
story, the acting, everything was really well done.
Yeah, it keeps your
And-
attention.
And
Very
like
well.
he said, like, even if you don't know anything about Dungeons and Dragons, it still holds
It's
your
still
attention.
an entertaining film. Yeah,
Yeah.
if you like the fantasy genre, you're gonna like this movie.
Right.
It's good. And it's funny. It's quick. It's always got like a new hook.
Yeah. And
so-
especially with Chris Pine being like the comedic element to it, he just adds that comedic element.
Yeah, he's
that
he's
needs
a
to
really
be
great
interjected.
comedic actor as
So-
well. So
And it's all like, no, like, I would definitely have to agree that, like, especially with like the bonding of the main characters, of Holga and Edgin being the mage and the shapeshifter character.
the druid.
Yeah, the druid.
Yeah, that's Simon, and is the mage, and I can't remember the druid's name off the top of my head. But yeah. They do a good job of showing them bonding as well, not
Right.
just the main two.
Yeah. And then I think Edgin and Holga, that's Chris Pine and Michelle Rodriguez.
Yep.
So it's like, yeah, that definitely cementing their bond more, because like after she gets resurrected by him using the one stone,
Yeah.
she goes like, wait, use it on me? Like,
Yeah.
what the hell? And it's basically that whole thing of going like, no, like, you don't have to use it on me. Use it on your wife that you wanted to bring
Right.
back. Like, and especially in the beginning, he goes like, yeah, she's basically a sister to me, because
Well, and
she was my rock at rock bottom,
Yeah.
essentially. Because after his wife died, he just went to the bars and just got drunk all the time with his daughter. So
Yeah.
being on the counter.
Yeah.
So
But yeah, no, it was really good movie. I hope that they make another one.
yeah,
I would love to
I
see,
would
like, a
like
sequel
to go see it
or-
again too.
A sequel, or even just like another unrelated story set in the D&D universe would be really
Right.
cool.
Because like that's what makes it interesting, because like they all don't have to be connected.
Nope.
Going like, oh, this ties to this
completely
one, blah blah
different
blah.
adventure, yeah.
Because like no two D&D stories or campaigns are ever the same.
Yeah.
Not ever. Like,
Yeah,
you
even-
always
even-
have different people introduced. You have different characters. You have different events that happen.
Well, and
So-
even when you're running a module, is what they're called, like they're like pre-made adventures.
Right.
You know, the characters that people make up are going to be different every single
Oh,
time.
yeah.
Like the players themselves and
Yeah.
how they handle situations are going to be different.
It's like,
So-
oh, you fall into a cavern and like you're split off from your team, like, and now there's an ogre in front of you. Like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, this is what I would do. Blah blah blah. Roll for initiative. Blah blah blah. Whatever. And it's like, okay, cool. So it's like my friend Dustin, he'll sometimes play D&D with his friends and stuff like that. So it's like, okay. And there's still people that will have like even podcasts oriented to just their campaign of going like, hey, we're gonna play.
There's tons of Dungeons and Dragons podcasts.
100%. Like especially what is it, like the biggest one that's out that's super popular?
Critical Role is probably
Critical
the
Role,
biggest
that's it.
one. Close behind it would be like Dimension 20 on Dropout, which is my favorite. The Dungeon Master Brandley Mulligan does an insane job. They actually just wrapped up a season called Dungeons and Drag Queens. It's the second season of Dungeons and Drag Queens. So they have like Bob the Drag Queen, Monet Exchange, Alaska Thunderfuck, and Jujubee as the players, and it's hilarious. It's really good. They're like in full drag the whole time. It's great.
And also given the fact that like with Critical Role, they literally made an animated series based on their campaigns that they've done.
Off the first campaign, I believe,
Yeah, and it's like, dude, that's freaking
and
awesome.
that one's so good because they're all professional voice actors.
Yeah, that's
so
even better
crazy.
because like they could just play their characters in
it's
it.
Crazy
Like that's
good.
awesome.
So,
Because like I love Matt Mercer.
Yeah,
like,
Matt Mercer's
he's
great.
He's awesome. But yeah, so this has been the Dungeons and Dragons Gauntlet. So hopefully we'll have to do another one of these.
Yeah.
And I've already got a plan for next week. Like this is gonna pop off. Like I'll say it now. We're gonna finally talk about John Wick Chapter 2.
Oh boy.
So I don't know if probably you can't see it, but I have my poster up for John Wick Chapter 2 next to PAX here. So I'll probably have to reposition the table because I noticed that it's more straight. Usually it's at an angle.
Yeah.
So, but I continue to figure things out as we go. But thank you all so much for watching / listening and being entertained. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. We're on YouTube and on Spotify. Leave a comment in the comment section below if you guys have a movie that you guys want us to talk about, whether that be like one of your personal favorites, a new movie that you're interested in watching. And if you just don't want to waste your money, it's like, you know what, this sounds really good. I think I might actually want to check that out.
Tell us if you have any other like bad movies that you love.
Yeah, Pax was telling me last night that,
love watching bad movies.
They love watching bad movies.
Yeah.
Which the first 3 are definitely really bad movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, leave us comments in the comment section below. Be sure to share this.
I want you to tell all your friends about me.
With other people that, you know, love movies, love bad movies, just love people talking about movies in general.
Love Dungeons and Dragons.
So yeah, especially with this episode, running the gauntlet of Dungeons and Dragons movies. But yeah, and then also be sure to check us out on Instagram and TikTok because I need to get back into posting clips on there as well. Just been super busy and editing and it's a mess. But anyhow, thank you all so much for watching and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.